What's up, guys? Eric Codes here on my daily walk. As I told you, this channel is mostly about trying to get exercise. First of all, as a coder, you have a tendency to really sit a lot more than you used to. You're not as active as you used to be, so you have to make it intentional to get out and get some exercise. So that's what I'm doing. So if I seem out of breath, it's because I'm walking at a fast pace. But I figure I'd take the time to talk to people who mostly are making the change into coding or trying to get into the industry or whatever it might be. Again, if you watch any of my videos before, you know that I had a whole career. I made a change in my early 30s to become a coder. And right now I am a PHP developer. And so I think my journey is always a good one for people to give hope, because, you know, I had, at the time I stopped working my old job, or by the time I switched careers, I should say, because I didn't switch careers without having a job. So don't ever do that. But so I don't remember what I was saying, but when I switched, I had 3 kids at the time, mortgage, sole income, so it's scary, and I get it. So if you ever need reassurance that you can do it, come visit my channel, watch some of my videos. So today, though, I wanted to talk about, I guess, when you become a junior developer, when you get your first job, it's really taxing, because especially if you haven't worked on other code bases before, it's kind of a shock to the system, right? So before you get a job as a programmer, most of the time you're building your own projects, right? So what that means is you're not reading code as much as you're writing code. So let's extrapolate that. What I mean by that is you're used to coding and doing things the way you want to do them. And that's great, and it's a great way to learn, and you learn the fundamentals that way, and all those other things. However, when you get into your first code base, it's not going to be that way. It's somebody else's code that you're looking at. So you need to learn how to read other people's code. So you can already write code, but you need to be able to learn how to read their code. So I think that's a big skill that you need to learn. And I think when you first get your first job, you don't realize that. You get pumped, hey, you passed the interviews, right? You did, whether there was an algorithm test or, which, to be honest with you, I had several software engineer jobs and web developer jobs. And I think one of them, I had a whiteboard challenge. So I don't know how common that is. So if you're spending a ton of time on like Leak Code or Code Wars or whatever it is, I don't know how much that's very relevant. I guess if you want to get a job at like Fang or something like that, but I've never interviewed for one of them because I don't really think I'd ever want to work for one. But anyways, so you get the job and you expect that you're going to be able to go in and make an impact right away. But yeah, I can write code. And then you get there and they're like, oh, well, we'll give you something easy. We need, a button added here that updates the database there. And in your mind, you're like, okay, it's going to be so easy to do. But then you look at the button, and that button already calls an API that does a bunch of other things at the same time as what you're trying to do, right? So you're jumping through different code modules, different files. You start to see that to even make a database call, they have like an in-house ORM, right? Something that you're not used to, just writing a SQL query. And even if you wanted to write a regular SQL query, they have a class that contains the connection to actually even do that, right? So what am I getting at? I'm saying that you're going to find out that in your first job, you're not going to be a rock star at the very beginning. There's a lot of learning to do. And this is the difference between like a junior level developer and a senior level developer is, as a junior, you just haven't seen as much of other people's code, right? You just haven't. So you'll learn it as time goes. and you get more used to it. You know, like, and I'd be a liar to tell you when I took my most recent job, not my first job, but my most recent job, that I could do everything right away. You know, it started with one feature that was like a brand new feature that I'd kind of intertwined into the code in my own way. But then after I got that and got used to the way that it's set up, the way that it works, I went and they started asking for things that were more intertwined in the overall code base. So what do we do about it? How do we prepare for that sort of thing if we've never seen that before? Well, one way is you pass the interview, and you get a job, and they wait. You know, they work with you, and they eventually you figure it out. That's way number one. Number two, how else can you do it? Right? You don't get that first job, and now you're nervous and you want to get better at it. Well, this is where I would suggest you start to pick up like a CMS, something like a WordPress. And I know people hear WordPress, they're like, that's not real web development. That's so wrong. People think WordPress is Wix. People think WordPress is, what's the other big one? Canva. It's not. It's really could be further from the truth. Yes, you can go and you can get a pre-made theme and change the colors in the settings and that sort of thing. You can download plugins, whatever it is for WordPress, but that's not what WordPress developers typically do. WordPress developers usually make custom themes. Like, I've done several. You make custom themes, you make custom plugins, and custom post types to finish or to meet your needs. The company that you're working for, whoever hired you, to meet their needs. So you take the infrastructure of WordPress, which is the way the database works, and the library of tools that you have, built-in functions, and then you work around those things to actually make an application. And when you do that, it's very similar to when you're coming into someone else's code, right? You come into someone else's code, you come into a code base at your job, and they have a database set up. They have functions that they use all the time. You know, they have maybe JavaScript front end modules that, you know, every time you save something, it pops up and it says, would you like to save? Are you sure you want to save this? Save over, right? And that thing's used 1,000 times throughout the application. So you need to learn how to use that, right? So what I'm getting at is that basically, if you were to take like a WordPress or a Drupal, and again, both are PHP, which I've already said, that is a language to learn if you want to be a web developer. Don't believe people that say the language is dead, because it is alive and well. I see so many jobs for PHP developers. WordPress, Drupal, a lot of them. So, but it's a great way to learn how to integrate into a fully working code base. And then when you get to your first job, you're going to be used to finding like, okay, well, where is this function, right? And then using a tool like a Visual Studio Code, where you'll learn how to find stuff in files, or you learn how to go to the definition, or go to the references, or go to all the different things, so you can jump around the code base and find what you're looking for. And to be honest with you, I think that's the big difference between a junior level developer and a mid-level developer, is that the mid-level developer can find what they need, right? The mid-level, they can find what they need, they can read the code that they need, and they maybe get hung up, you know, once or twice during a week, right? Where they have to, you know, get in touch with the senior dev and be like, you know, how does this whole thing work, right? And again, and take a step further, that's the difference between a mid-level dev and a senior dev, right? Senior dev typically won't need much help. They're the ones that people go to for help. But the big difference between the junior level and mid-level is a mid-level developer or engineer can they can, sorry, I'm out of breath at the top of the hill here. The mid-level developer is able to read code and find things on their own, because a junior developer can write code. And I mean, the other thing is the junior level developer is not going to do, they're not going to be as, their code's not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be as clean as the mid-level, but it'll still work. So to me, that point is kind of moot, because sometimes it's easier to read a junior's code and see what they're doing than it is to read a senior's code, because it's, you know, got all that stuff like that built-in stuff we were talking about. So anyways, I don't know what the title of this video will be again. It's just my words coming out of my mouth. But I think what I'm trying to say is when you get your first developer job, you're gonna feel overwhelmed. You're gonna feel like you suck. Imposter syndrome is gonna spike its ugly little head up and say, hey, you know, you don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't be doing this. You should quit. Not true. Even mid-level senior developers have to Google things. They have to use ChatGPT, you know. Well, I don't know if they have to, but it's faster, right? They definitely have to Google stuff, because you forget. There's too much stuff to remember, right? If all of a sudden, you know, I need a function that exists in WordPress and I can't remember what it is, I look it up, right? No one can, there's not enough storage in everyone's brains to remember all these things. That's why there's documentation, right? That's why people say documentation is so important. But anyways, that's my take on it. Like, don't get frustrated. Don't get down on yourself. Everybody feels like they don't know what they're doing. and you'll figure it all out. And like I said, learn to read code. Learn to follow it around. Even if that means when you get your first job, you tell the higher developer, the senior developer, or whoever's training the mid-level developer, and you say, hey, listen, I'd really like today just to go through and play with everything, right? Or even, you know, because like the company I work at, I asked for this too. And I said, hey, do you guys mind if I sit with each of the teams that use our application so I can see how they use it? Because it's a lot easier to see them, you know, to understand the business rules of what they do and how their workflow is, to actually see them do it, than for me to just try to guess at how they do it and not actually know what's going on. So go in there, read the code base, number one. Watch people interact with whatever it is that you're making is number two. And number three, like I said, I don't really think it hurts if before you get the job, you go and you start using a Drupal or a WordPress, and really see how another application is built, and how you have to learn how to work within that application. Because again, React, like if you're a JavaScript developer, React is great, but it's kind of like very bare bones, right? Like you have to call in, if you're doing a Node.js project, you have to call in all of your databases and all those things differ, right? And typically, when you build it, it's a completely custom build, right? However you want to do it. So, whereas WordPress or Drupal, there are rules already in place and things that you need to do to actually get the application to work the way you want it to work. And I think that's more similar to what it's going to be like when you come in on your first job. So, anyways, that's my take on first job, and how you got to keep at it, learn to read code. And the last thing I'm going to mention is you're going to be afraid of breaking things. It's just normal, right? I still get afraid of breaking things too. But the more you do it and the more you actually break something and then you put it back, the more you get used to it, you know, with the exception of database. When it comes to database, I am so careful. So careful. But there are also guards in database too. You can do rollbacks if you're using SQL. But even so, like if you're using like a a database like thing, like a like software, like a Table Plus, or like a PHP MyAdmin or something like that, it can be easy to, like, if you have like a test system and a regular system, it can be easy to confuse the two because they're so similar, and the only thing that's different really is the URL at the top. So, you know, the server that you're connected to. So database aside, I wouldn't be too afraid of breaking things because you can always roll them back. Learn to make up backups, you know. Git is definitely the best way to do that, but sometimes you're going to come into a code base where there isn't Git. Like me, there's no Git, unfortunately. So the way we do it is we back up the file that was there, you know, name it underscore backup in the date, and then put our new file in. And if something breaks, you take the file you just put in out, erase the backup line from the one that you had before, and you're back in business. Again, not the greatest way to do it, but that's the way that it's done. It's not my, I'm the mid-level developer. It's not my code base. I didn't make it, so I just use it and do what the senior dev says. But anyways, that's what I'm saying. Just don't be afraid to get in there, and that'll come with time. You'll get better at it, and you'll get less nervous to actually do things and change things, and it just comes with time. Give it time, keep at it, and you'll be all right. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe if you like to watch this, you know, content, and there'll always be videos coming your way. Anyways, have a good one. This is Eric Codes. Peace out.